Thank you for that choir number. I love the hymn, and I love that arrangement, and I love you. Well, our dear young friends everywhere, how privileged Sister Holland and I are to be with you tonight, even though we're reaching most of you around the world through the modern wonder of technology. We're delighted to have a personal audience here at this university and its Institute of Religion, where Pat and I started our college education, dated, and got married. I'm waiting to see if a chill went through the room when I said the word marriage. Don't panic. We are not going to talk about marriage tonight. Some of you already are, and we don't want the rest of you to run screaming from the room. But I do mention our own young adult roots and romantic beginnings with the thought in mind that if it struck us on a night like this, who knows? Might strike others. Certainly plenty of you sisters have told us that there are some men who need to be struck. If not with Cupid's arrow, then perhaps a small pickleball paddle. If there is any young woman out there tonight seated with a young man who fits this description, Elder and Sister Holland give you permission to elbow him in the ribs right now, right this minute, gently enough to convey love, sharply enough to make the point. We will be happy if such a nudge works for you the way it worked for us. Except in our case, it was my elbow and Sister Holland's ribs. This coming June, it will be 60 years ago that Pat and I were married in the St. George Temple, just a half a mile from this university campus. I've told some of you of the difficulty that I had in that courtship. I knew I had my work cut out for me when on our first date, I knock at the door. Her little brother answers the door, sizes me up and down, and then calls out, "Hey, Dreamboat, your barnacle's here." I fought my way up from that. It didn't help when later in the night, the very first date, she's being very courteous and sweet. We hadn't been out long into the evening, and she said, "Well, Jeff, tell me your dreams." And I said, "Well, one was that I was in a cave, and there were some snakes and spiders, and then I thought a force in the back, a kind of a scary thing." It was later that I understood she meant my goals in life. But let me just say to the men in the room, and this is important, a marriage is a great continuing relationship of conversation and convictions and opinions. And in those conversations and convictions and opinions, one person is right, and the other person is called a husband. If you can get that down early, brethren, it'll just make life a lot smoother. Well, My apologies to the translators. I have no idea what they are doing with that. And can you imagine those poor people in France saying, "What did he say?" Well, to be serious, this is the start of a new year. And if you're feeling like the rest of us, it is a welcome chance to say goodbye to a period that's been difficult for many and tragic for some. We're gradually coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, but this plague of almost biblical proportions is still very real in many parts of the world, as there is still an average of over 1,700 reported deaths from this illness daily yet. This scourge has taken a toll not only on physical health, but also on the social, political, and economic life of almost everyone on the planet, one way or the other. A different kind of scourge is the one still unfolding in Eastern Europe, where millions of people, including members of the church, have been devastated, displaced, or have given their very lives in a conflict they did not ask for and did not deserve. Just weeks ago, while on an assignment in Europe, Sister Holland and I met with some of those Ukrainian refugees. We laughed and cried and prayed with those who'd left everything behind and fled with only the clothing on their backs. We felt the same emotion and sorrow for our faithful members inside Russia, who are also innocently affected by this conflict. In addition to these tragedies, in many places throughout the world, we see mass shootings, a tragedy just last week here in southern Utah, immoral content in entertainment, political activity in which such fundamental principles as integrity and kindness and honesty seem to have been somehow forgotten. And of course, there are many other cultural and social issues that trouble us. But we haven't come tonight to depress you with the world's problems. In fact, we have come for just the opposite reason. We recognize the understandable malaise that hangs over your generation, and we apologize that our generation has not resolved some of these problems that you now face. But we call you and every other young Latter-day Saint to be in the forefront of the moral force that can resolve these problems, that can turn back the tide of fear and pessimism and anxiety surrounding us. How important it is for you to pray not only for the Lord to prevail in your lives, as President Russell M. Nelson has asked, but also to pray that the values of your life will prevail with others who aren't quite so sure yet. If as individual disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ, we were all more loving and peaceful and kind, if we would all try to keep the commandments of God as best we can, then we have every reason to feel confident about the world's condition and our own. Walking into the future this way, filled with peace and